When Steve Lynn was a little boy growing up in the cotton fields of LaGrange, Georgia, he dreamed of a different life. He dreamed of becoming a CEO.
I was the first in my family to go to high school. My mother and father were uneducated cotton mill hands. My aunt and uncle were. My grandmother and grandfather were. And everybody on my side of town was. It was an interesting, neat kind of deal. The Callaway family owned the mills. They later sold to Milliken when I was in college. I guess during Milliken at the time, but Milliken today. But he was very philanthropic, so he built lots of things for families of the workers. We grew up poor, but we didn't grow up without. Our house was clean. My mother and father were a handsome couple and much in love, and I was much loved and the oldest, and never went hungry or without clothes. And I got to do things that we couldn't have afforded if I'd been living in Atlanta or Columbus or a bigger city in Georgia.
Steve went to Tennessee Tech University on a tennis scholarship, received his BS in industrial engineering, and then on to the University of Louisville to get his MBA. Now he was ready to follow his dream.
I wanted to be a CEO. I wanted to run a company. Clearly, I didn't know all that that meant. I didn't know what it was going to do to my hairline or my waistline, but the people that, and looking back on it, I would today say the people that God brought into my life that were my mentors and the people that I wanted to be like were presidents and owners of some of the businesses there, and I just wanted to be like them, as much as I understood what that meant at the time. Of course, it meant that I wanted to have air conditioning. It meant that I wanted to have a different kind of house than I grew up in, and different kinds of food and travel and all the things that come along with that.
He was running Kentucky Fried Chicken Corporation by the time he was 25, and at 29, married his best friend, Mila.
Got married at 29, became president of this company. I had achieved a life's major goal. Mila asked me one day, what are the most important things in your life? And I said, power, recognition, and money. And there was this immediate look of significant pain on her face, and I knew what I'd done, and I'm kind of fast on my feet and a salesman by nature, and I said, oh, darling, it goes without saying that you're number one. But she knew that I'd told her the truth, and I knew that she knew, and she knew that I knew that she knew. And so I began to think about this pain that I'd seen on her face as I would head into work every day. And to live in Southern California, with the price of housing then, and I'm sure today, you live fairly long commutes, and so I had about an hour and a half commute each way each day, and it gave me time to reflect and on my life priorities and that pain that I'd seen on her face, the pain that I had inflicted. And I realized that my wedding vows hadn't meant anything to me. That I wasn't making a commitment. I was just trying to get through that ordeal that we call a wedding ceremony. I was just repeating what the pastor said. I hadn't made a commitment. So one day, driving to work all by myself, I made a commitment that she was the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And it was a very peace-giving, simplifying kind of thing. And as I reflected back on that, it was the first time in my life that I'd ever made a commitment to anything or anyone that didn't have right at the center of it that question, what's in this for me? And it was a necessary first step for someone from ambitious, poor background, going as hard as I could go, as fast as I could go kind of background, I think, to begin to understand the spiritual side of life.
At this time, he was running a little company called Century 21. He committed his life to Christ on another long drive to the city, and soon after that, everything would change.
A few weeks after this step of faith, Art Bartlett, the founder of Century 21, had sold the company. A representative of the new owners called me into his office one day. We met for about an hour and a half. I don't remember all he said, but I distinctly remember him saying, "You're fired." And So at 29, I'd achieved my life's major goal. At 32, it felt like it was violently kind of ripped away, and I went through all of the ego bruise and self-doubt and embarrassment that anybody goes through when that happens.
2 weeks after being fired, Steve's father passed away. A friend called with encouraging words and this scripture, Romans 8:28. It became his mantra and guided him to another company, and eventually he was on the road to Oklahoma. As chairman and CEO of Sonic, Steve Lynn built a management team who transformed a struggling company to the nation's largest chain of drive-in restaurants, taking them from $10 million to over $2.5 billion during his tenure. He was on top of his game, and on his 40th birthday, Mila announced he was going to be a father for the first time. Family is of primary importance in Steve's life. With the birth of Whitney, and Josh not far behind a few years later, Steve and Mila now had their family, and everything was perfect here in Oklahoma. So why did they leave?
So here I was 12 years into this deal, and I wasn't having creative new thoughts. Nobody was complaining about that. The company was going like that, but a management recruiter called about Shoney's and Captain D's, and what lights just turned on about the things that those two great brands needed to add to what they were doing to bring it back to the heights of that it had been several years before. So that's why we went there. It wasn't leaving here, it was taking on that challenge that got my juices flowing and excited.
After several years, Steve left Shoney's to become chairman and majority stockholder of Cummings Signs, the oldest sign company in the U.S., and the CEO of Backyard Burgers, with approximately 180 restaurants nationwide. The Lynns have built a beautiful home in Nashville Mila has aptly named The Last Dance, miles away from the old house, nestled next to the town dump in LaGrange, Georgia.
There's a truism in life. It's called by different names, sacrificial giving, tithing, but it applies to time, talents, and money. As we give of those things without asking, what's in this for me, it always comes back.
Congratulations to C. Stephen Lynn, this year's Oklahoma City University Meinders School of Business honoree for the Chairman's Award.